Thank you for attending our presentation today. In this study, we'll look at the phonetics and phonology of intrusive vowels in Jilim. And my name is Zoe Haupt. I'm an undergraduate student at the University of Oregon Linguistics Department. My co-contributors to this project are Dr. Don Daniels and Dr. Melissa Baese-Berk from the UO Linguistics Department as well. So in this study, we'll be looking at some inserted vowels in Jilim, also known as bara or sigibara, and we'll describe the phonological and phonetic characteristics of these vowels and compare them to similar phenomena across languages. And we'll also argue that these vowels are not phonologically real with more phonetic and phonological evidence. So to learn a little bit about the language background, I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Daniels, who did field work in the Jilim village. So take it away from here, Don.
Okay, thanks. So Jilim is spoken in Madang in PNG. It's a Trans-New Guinea language. Within that, it belongs to the Madang branch of Trans-New Guinea, and it's a Rai Coast language within Madang. There's probably about 700 speakers. But it is only spoken by young adults and people older than that now. I never heard any children using the language in the village, although many are passively fluent. I started doing fieldwork in Jilim village in 2016. I went twice in 2016, once in 2018, total of about 2 months over there doing naturalistic recording and elicitation. Here's a map. So it's spoken inland from Astrolabe Bay up into the foothills of the Finistères a little ways. And here are a few pictures of life in the village. So here's a group of people playing cards. Here are some girls getting ready or dressed up for a celebration. Here's me and the late Korom Jalum working on the language. And here's a view from the hills looking down towards the coast. All right, back to you.
All right, thanks, Don, for introducing the language. So the plan for today is the introduction, which we've already completed, an overview of the phonology of Jilim, and then we're going to present some phonological and phonetic evidence that these vowels are intrusive, and then we'll finish our presentation up. And here is a picture of the lovely Dr. Melissa Baese-Berk, who is a co-author. She won't be in the presentation today, but she has contributed so much to this project. So, all right, let's first talk about Jilim phonology. So here is the consonant phonemes. So there are voiceless stops, including a uvular. There are voice stops, including an affricate. There are prenasalized stops, which also include a palatal affricate. There's nasals, and there's 3 fricatives, including 2 kinds of H's, a rounded H and a non-rounded H, which we will mostly be ignoring because they kind of also show some interesting variation. And then we have our liquids, R and L, and our semivowels, W and Y. So here's the vowel inventory. It's a pretty typical vowel inventory, except for the vowels we'll be talking about today. So let's talk a little bit about consonant clusters. So most lexical roots are built on a CVC template, and everything in this template is optional except for the second lexical vowel. So every lexical root does have at least 1 vowel. But the fact that you can just drop the first vowel means you can get consonant clusters of 2 or 3 word initially. Inside these consonant clusters, you get these predictable vowels. The vowels are predictable from the environment they appear in. And there has been some research looking into these predictable inserted vowels, such as Hall 2006, who differentiates between 2 main types of predictable vowel. So she differentiates between epenthetic vowels and intrusive vowels. And one of the key differences here is that epenthetic vowels are phonologically visible, so they can participate in phonological processes like stress assignment. And intrusive vowels are invisible to phonology. So at the moment, we're leaning towards the notion that these inserted vowels in Jilim are intrusive. And so we'll show some phonological and phonetic evidence for this. So for phonology, we'll talk about predictability, loan words, reduplication, and native speaker intuitions. And for phonetic evidence, we'll discuss duration, variability, intensity, and vowel quality. So let's start with our phonological evidence, predictability. So the first thing I want to show you is that these vowels are predictable in terms of their quality and the environments they show up in. So they'll always appear between the first and second consonant in a cluster, whether that's a 2 or 3 consonant cluster. And their quality is predictable. And there's a set of 4 rules that can predict the quality of the vowel. And they apply in order. So the first rule would apply first. And if it doesn't apply, we move on to the second rule. If that doesn't apply, we move on to the third rule and so on. So our rules are as such. So if the second consonant in the cluster is a palatal glide, the intrusive vowel will be E. If the second consonant is a bilabial consonant, the intrusive vowel will be U. And then if those conditions don't apply, we look to the following vowel in the word to predict the quality. So if the following vowel is a front vowel, then the intrusive vowel will be E. And if the following vowel is a back vowel, the intrusive vowel will be U. And if none of these above conditions apply, then the quality of the intrusive vowel will be barred I. So I'm going to show you a few examples. So for this one, this is when the palatal glide is in the second consonant position. So we can see here that the intrusive vowel will be E. Here's some examples of our second rule. So if the second consonant in the cluster is bilabial, we will see U intrusion. The next rule we have is we'll look to the following vowel in the word. And if we see that the following vowel is a front vowel, then E will be inserted. But if the following vowel is a back vowel, U will be inserted. And I'd just like to play an example of this. You can hear what it sounds like. And so in this example, the intrusive vowel shows up in the word maned. And so, and it's really audible, it's really long. And the speaker of this is Daniel Llagas. And so let's take a listen. All right, so as you can see in the spectrogram, there's clear evidence of an intrusive vowel right here, as you can see the formants. And then in this example, let's look at the same word maned, but in this example, it is not produced. It is omitted in this word. So let's take a listen. All right, so this variability, this optionality is very common, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So as you can see here in the spectrogram, there's no such evidence of formants or a vocalic gesture in between the M and the N. So then our last rule is if none of the above conditions apply, we will have barred I as the quality of the intrusive vowel. And so in this example, here's a couple tokens of the word friend, which is manai. And in the first token, you will be able to hear the intrusive vowel. And in the second token, there is no intrusive vowel. And the speaker is Casper Yamu. So let's take a listen. All right, so let's take a look at the spectrogram. So here we see the presence of an intrusive vowel. And in the second token, we see no intrusive vowel. So incidentally, these rules of vowel intrusion create variation in the stem shape, and that serves as more evidence for seeing these vowels as intrusive. So min is the root for to stay, and it can be realized as min, moon, or min, depending on the suffixes that show up on the verb. Next thing we'll talk about are loanwords. So some Takpisin loanwords have been adapted into this pattern. So let's look at the second example, Takpisin misineri. And this pattern of vowel insertion applies to these words in Jilim. So if we look at the first vowel in Jilim misineri, this vowel is actually subject to the same variability as other intrusive vowels. So in other words, it's optional and it's not a full lexical vowel. So let's listen to an example spoken by Koru John. And as you can see here in the spectrogram, we have a very short intrusive vowel. So So what's interesting about this loan word adaptation is that local language ideology would have rejected all these words as Jilim words. And Jilim speakers are all highly fluent speakers of Tok Pisin, and they're all capable of producing these unadapted forms. And they sometimes do. However, the fact that they sometimes do adapt this these loan words to Jilim phonology means that this phonological structure is real for them on some level. And then the last bit of evidence we'll talk about today is reduplication and native speaker intuitions. So there is a reduplicative prefix that doesn't see intrusive vowels in Jilim. And then we also have one native speaker who's been transcribing stories, and his pattern of writing down some of these words is interesting. So he is aware of these vowels sometimes, but often doesn't transcribe them. All right, let's look at some of the phonetic evidence. So we analyzed 7 recordings from 7 different speakers in Prot for a total of 23.5 minutes of segmented speech. And we looked, in each recording, we looked at the words that had word initial consonant clusters, and then we segmented or put boundaries between each individual sound within the word, including the intrusive vowel that was present. And then we tagged each phoneme and intrusive vowel. And for now, we've excluded a few problematic types of words. So words that begin with a W, Y, or H. The semivowels W and Y were a little problematic because of their acoustic similarity to the intrusive vowel. And then H shows some interesting variation when it comes to vowel intrusion. So we've excluded that for now. We've also excluded words that may be 1 or 2 phonological words. And we've also excluded words that contain another special type of vowel, which is a prosodically lengthened vowel. And then the total number of vowel tokens we had after this analysis is 1,612, and about 22% of those were intrusive vowels and 78% were real vowels. And after tagging each recording, we ran a script over all the recordings to extract that acoustic information. So the first thing we'll talk about is length or duration. And we found that intrusive vowels are much shorter than real ones. And this is not counting the words where an intrusive vowel could have potentially been produced, but wasn't. And if we did include these vowels, the duration would be even shorter. So this is just looking at the words where the vowel was produced, and it's still almost half as short as a real vowel. And even if we're only comparing intrusive E and U versus real E and U and excluding barred I, we still see that the intrusive vowel is much shorter. And this suggests that these vowels are likely intrusive and that they're unlike vowels that are part of the phonological system. And there does seem to be a general consensus that epenthetic and intrusive vowels are shorter in duration when compared to other vowels. For example, Hall 2011 finds this in Lebanese Arabic. Next thing we'll talk about is variability in duration. And according to Hall's typology, the intrusive vowels should show more variability when it comes to duration, but we found that intrusive vowels in Jilim actually show less variability. However, intrusive vowels do still have a significant variable duration because either they're present or they're not. And this bimodal distribution distinguishes these vowels from real vowels because speakers don't typically have the option to omit vowels like they do with these intrusive vowels. And this optionality does fit in with Hall's typology. However, interestingly, this optionality contrasts with other studies looking into similar phenomena. For example, Blevins and Polly in 2010 looked at inserted vowels in Kalam, which is a Papuan language, and they noted that these inserted vowels actually never disappear completely, whereas we see in Jilim, they can be completely omitted. So there is some variation when it comes to the qualities or characteristics of inserted vowels. Next thing we'll talk about is intensity. So we found for intensity that intrusive vowels do have about the same intensity as real ones. They're a little more quiet, but this actually suggests that they're not epenthetic vowels because epenthetic vowels tend to be much quieter than real vowels. Next thing we'll talk about is vowel quality. So we found that intrusive vowels are actually more peripheral in the vowel space than the real ones. And as you can see on the vowel chart, the darker colored points will represent the intrusive vowels and the lighter colored points represent the real vowels. So as you can see, the intrusive vowels have more extreme F2 values. So they're being produced farther forward and farther back in the mouth. So this suggests that they're unlike real vowels because they're more peripheral than the real vowels, but this also suggests that they're unlike epenthetic vowels, which tend to be quite central in the vocal tract. All right, let's wrap things up. In this study, we found that inserted vowels in Jilim are likely intrusive rather than epenthetic and are not phonologically real. And we've shown both phonetic and phonological support for this. And we also found that intrusive vowels do challenge Hall's typology of inserted vowels in some ways. For example, they can copy vowel quality across non-guttural consonants, and they can occur in homoorganic clusters. And other studies looking at similar phenomena also noticed that inserted vowels do not fit neatly into the dichotomy of Hall's typology. For example, Tabane and Breen in 2011 looked at inserted vowels in Aranda, which is a Northern Australian language, and Blevins and Polly in 2010 looked at inserted vowels in Kalam, which is a Papuan language, and they both noted that these inserted vowels are clearly not phonemic, like the ones we have in Jilim, but display traits of both epenthetic and intrusive vowels. So there may be some more overlap between the typologies. And one thing we found really interesting is the fact that these intrusive vowels are more peripheral in nature and do have these more peripheral vowel qualities. And this suggests that they are not a byproduct of articulatory mistiming and may be stored in the lexical representations of the speaker's minds. And this also suggests that these intrusive vowels may have gestural targets. And there's been mixed findings about whether speakers do have an articulatory target when producing these types of vowels. So for example, Brauman and Goldstein in 1992 did find articulatory targets when English speakers were producing a reduced schwa, but Davidson and Stone in 2003 did not find evidence for a gestural target when English speakers were producing an intrusive schwa. And interestingly, Stone in 2005 argues for centrifugal reduction, meaning that vowels can be reduced to more peripheral values rather than being centralized, which is similar to what we see in Jilim. However, synchronic vowel reduction can be phonemic, and the vowel slots they occupy are contrastive, whereas the phenomenon we see in Jilim occupies non-contrastive vowel slots. So from a synchronic viewpoint, these vowels in Jilim are likely inserted rather than reduced. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about today is highly complex consonant clusters. So Shalise Easterday recently did a typological study looking at languages with highly complex consonant clusters. And she defines these as clusters with 3 obstruents or 4 consonants of any type. And about 7% of the world's languages have these. And if we're right with our phonetic and phonological analysis, Jilim also has highly complex consonant clusters. And it's important to note that Easterday says that the presence of transitional elements is normal and common within a language that has highly complex consonant clusters. And so we wonder, do intrusive vowels in Jilim, are they transitional elements? Do they perform some sort of communicative function, such as providing formant cues to adjacent consonants, as suggested by Tabane and Breen? And this is something we really hope to uncover in future work. So thank you so much for attending our presentation today. I hope this contributes to building the typology of vowel intrusion and complex consonant clusters. Thank you. Kaye.